I read 52 books this year, and I think that my insights may serve you well. Let's get right into it. First off, the 2 minute rule. So prior to me using this rule, I would always be sort of monkey minding my way through tasks. I'd be starting on one thing with intention, and then something would just catch my mind, and I would just like not know whether I can go to that task or keep zoning into the current task at hand. And so, kind of to draw a border on the line, if you will, is I use the 2 minute rule, which is from David Allen's book, Getting Things Done. And what it kind of entails is I would look at a task that I might do, and I think to myself, okay, 2 minutes or less to do it. If the answer is yes, then I just do it without even thinking about it. On the other hand, if that's not the case, then I would get the thought out of my head by writing it down on a to-do list, following which I reserve that for later while I dive deep into the current task at hand. Next, action solves everything. You might be thinking about trying some task or whatever, but then maybe others' opinions might get in the way. Maybe you're afraid others might judge you, or maybe you won't look good doing this or whatever. But a lot of this can cause many forms of low level stress. And so I think that the best thing to do is to just give the thing a try. It's rare that you can go into a task and you don't have the option to just like not do it anymore. Most times you could go into a task, and if you don't like it, you could just not do it. And so there's like little to no cost to finding out if you actually like doing something. I mean, that's a lot of the point of going through life. You want to try stuff. Maybe in old age, you look back and you think, man, I regret not trying many things in life. I should have probably tried more things like hiking, dancing, et cetera, et cetera. And so if kind of you get caught into this overthinking loop, then adopting a experimentation mindset would really help to declutter your mind, because you can always dispute what's going on in your head, but you can't dispute how you feel when doing an activity. Next up, we have the importance of clarifying your values. So why do I include this in a list of things that I learned from reading 52 books in a year? Well, there's going to be a lot of things that are going to try and push you around in life, like noise, ego, and then there's the opinions of others trying to sway you. And so, how do you cut through all that and realize what's important to you in life? Because at the end of the day, you're going to be old, maybe 70, 80 years old or something. You're going to look back and go, perhaps, okay, maybe I shouldn't have cared so much about others' opinions. To really clarify your values, that cuts through all that. So, how did this change my life, sort of? Well, I took some time off from school and I had a health scare. I kind of had like a panic attack, if you will. And as I was going through recovery, sort of, I read a lot of books, tried to find some things that I might be interested in. And I went into an extreme of kind of just mapping out like a personal constitution of kind of like what I am, what I do, values under which this qualifies under, and the whys of which I do that. And so I sort of did that to try and come up with like ways to qualify, okay, is this something that I should do because I actually want to do it and not something's trying to sway me. Maybe my emotions getting the better of me, anything. So if I can do that, I could cut through the ego, the noise, others' opinions, then I could perhaps justify living a life of relative stillness. So if I can do that, then all of a sudden, in some sense, I am empowered. So the takeaway here is basically, if you genuinely take the time to clarify your values, you'll have a better shot at knowing where you want to go in life and not just end up somewhere by pure accident. Next, we have the impact of journaling. So generally, I had a lot of repressed emotions from childhood, and I had trouble at least passively tapping into them. And so I felt like to try and give myself information as to how to quote unquote find myself, journaling became my go-to. And a lot of why I started this YouTube channel actually arose from the insights I found from myself journaling. I wrote down sort of my passions over time, and one of them was teaching. But I did not like seeing how in college, half the students wouldn't show up to lecture. Some of those who actually did show up to class were just on their phones, some of which were just asleep. And then you got the lecturer not being too passionate about teaching the subject because he's been likely teaching it for 5 to 7 years now or something. So I didn't exactly like the formal education way of teaching. So I was like, okay, I like teaching, but I feel like their involvement potentially into how I want to teach could get in the way of me actually being fulfilled. I wanted the control. So through my journaling, I found out that I can't be stopped nor controlled by anyone to teach on a YouTube channel. And so when I sort of came through reading and experimentation into that insight, I was like, well, okay, I'm going to start a YouTube channel. So yeah, if that can just impact me in sort of that certain way, then imagine what it can do for you. I mean, there's things like stress reduction, mental health, all that sort of stuff. I could talk about that, but those are just, the 2 or 3 benefits that you could get from starting the habit of journaling. I typically do it just about before going to sleep because it actually helps me do getting thoughts out of my head. Lastly, overcoming my irritable bowel syndrome. So while I was having my panic attack regarding what I was saying a little earlier, I actually also had a irritable bowel syndrome problem. And so I was seeing to it that I would get these tests and sort of a prescription to try and make it get better. But then I was thinking, well, okay, I don't need recurring fees to just like bleed cash out of me. I'm basically at the mercy of these like pharmaceuticals and all that. And so I was just like, yeah, there has to be a better way than this. So I decided to purchase this like $10, $15 book that had coincidentally just came out at the time. It was called Young Forever by this renowned doctor, Mark Hyman. And in it, he basically outlines how conventional wisdom regarding medicine just treats the symptoms by largely just prescribing like medications to sort of, cut at the symptoms, but then not actually addressing like a lot of the causes of problems. Like, for example, most diseases or whatever, they're caused by largely inflammation to some degree or another. And so what I basically took away mainly from that book is that I had to cut 5 things from my diet: sugar, starch, dairy, wheat, and gluten. I did that, and basically I cured my IBS. So with that, I didn't have to be at the mercy on the whims of these pharmaceuticals and whether my IBS would get better on its own. So yeah, I think the takeaway from that is basically if you have like a health scare, you kind of, you get curious. You read up on it and don't just accept, the conventional treatment concerning what it actually is, because hey, your curiosity might lead you to an even better solution than the well-worn path has to offer. So just be curious. Ciao.